Okay, let's move on to something that I struggle with, right? I speak, and I know this because multiple people on this show, and you probably do the same in a second, Nick, have told me this. I speak way too fast. And there's other vocal tics and things that I have that if I was training to speak on stage, you and other people in the same kind of league as that you are in this would knock right out of me. Now, but I feel like I get away with a lot more in person than what I do on the podcast. And of course, you're talking through a microphone. It's then being translated into ones and zeros. It's then being transmitted for you and I across a vast ocean, and it's coming out of speakers or headphones at the other end. And so there are multiple points of failure. And even if it was 99% seamless all the way through, it could be anything at the other end that would scupper things up. So there's multiple elements to all of this that can make my not great kind of on-stage speaking voice just abysmal by the time it reaches your ears on a video meeting. So with that said, what's the biggest bang for buck thing that we should work on to improve our intelligibility or our ability to speak and be understood when we are communicating over a Skype call where people might be listening to this and go, well, this is all fine in person. I don't know why it's a problem now that we're communicating via the internet.
The easiest thing to do, this is quite a complicated subject, and again, I could geek out or nerd out very happily on this, but I'll try to keep it simple. And I promise not to mention the Navajo code breakers of World War II and the insight that led to in terms of exactly the question you're asking. I promise I won't do that. Moving on. So now that I've got you wildly curious as to what that is, the simple thing you can do is to get very relaxed one evening with a couple of friends, if you're allowed to see any friends or talk to them in person. Let's say you've got a pod. I don't know if that's what you call it in the UK, but that's what we call it here, where we have a pod of people that we've been hanging out with this whole time.
We've got bubbles, Nick. Same thing, though, I think.
Bubbles. Okay, yeah, pods and bubbles. Good. All right. Well, what is it they say that something about the common language separated, or two cultures separated by a common language, or something like that. But so pods and bubbles. Get very comfortable with your bubble and have a chat with them, and then record your own voice when you're at your most relaxed, just having chit chat with your mates. At that point, your voice is going to be at the right pitch. It's going to be at the right level of relaxation. It's going to have the right music to it. Now, there's, of course, much more we can do with a voice, and there are other problems that voices have and work that can be done. But that's the simplest thing. When we get on a video conference, because of this feeling of being watched the whole time and the sort of sense of being on stage, what happens is that creates a low level of adrenaline flow. And one of the things that's very sensitive to in humans to adrenaline is the voice, and it tends to push the voice up just a little bit higher. And so you find yourself talking at about this pitch instead of your more normal conversational one. But if you have a good 30-second recording of you speaking at your most conversational, relaxed way, then you can play that in your ear before you do the video conference. That should remind you what your voice sounds like, and then you can replicate that more easily when you're on the call. Because the idea is not to unconsciously transmit that tension in your voice by allowing your pitch to rise slightly. Now, that's just ground level basic speaking 101 on video conferencing. There's lots more we could say, but that's a good place to start, and it's fairly easy for people to do. So I recommend that one highly, because that's something that most people aren't consciously aware of. And yet unconsciously, we humans are incredibly sensitive to tension in each other's voices. So it's an important one.
Perfect. I love that. Very practical. Everyone can do that this afternoon or whenever they can see their bubble or pod and put that into practice. I want to get into perhaps stage 2 or 3 in a second, but something that I am becoming conscious of as I chat with you, Nick, is, this is totally anecdotal. I don't have data on this, but the people I've spoken to recently who, like yourself, incredible speaker, versus people like myself, average speakers, when I've been doing these podcasts recently, I've noticed a trend, and you just kind of blew it up in my face there, of the better speakers all tend to be doing the interviews stood up versus I'm sat down, clearly. And I found a lot of people that, and again, it's totally anecdotal, there's no data on this, people who I've found are less good speakers, they might have great things to say,